Welcome to another episode of VON. With us today is a vibrant young man whose dynamic energy and diverse skills definitely do set him apart. From mastering the art of writing and excelling in singing, he's a force to be reckoned with. Join us as we delve into his journey, passions, and unique blend of talents that define his extraordinary personality. I bet you, get ready for a literary adventure as we explore the inspiration, the processes, and unique perspective that carry on along his journey. You're welcome to Voice of the Oroko Nation, and it's our pleasure to have you as our guest today.
Thank you very much for having me on VON. It is an honor to be on your program.
The pleasure of having you is definitely ours. Can you please introduce yourself and tell us exactly which part of the Oroko Nation are you from precisely?
My name is Blessed E Ngoes. Folks call me Ngoe. I come from Bafakabalwe. I was born and raised in Bafakabalwe.
Lots of love to all the people from Bafakabalwe. So please, can you tell us your background, most especially your background as a writer?
My background is in communication, literature, and journalism. I also dabble, I'd say, in writing. I know your question asks my background in writing. I started writing a very long time ago. I think I was in class 5 of the primary school when I wrote a small poem which I started singing as a song. My writing, I don't want to call it a career yet because it's not yet a career, but my writing adventure goes hand in hand with my other artistic adventures, especially music. I do like to sing a lot, and I like to write songs. So that is my background.
What an endowment you do have, your ability to reconstruct your poems into songs. This is lovely. So when did your journey as a writer actually begin?
Yeah, my journey as a writer began, from childhood. I was around class 4, class 5, primary school, when I wrote my first ever creative piece. I know that the subject was about my mother. So yeah, I had a special relationship with my mom. I wrote that very short piece, which I would sing as a song. So yeah, that's the beginning of my writing journey.
You'll definitely have to go back through memories lane and rewrite the poem for us to read as well. Would like to know what the poem was all about. So besides writing, what else do you do?
Outside of writing, I am a budding scholar, I would say. I study communication. I study how people interact with others, and through these interactions, create identities and create communities and, those kinds of things. That is what I am from a professional and career standpoint. Outside of that, I do other things. I like to sing a lot, and I write songs, mostly in Oroko. In fact, a lot of the songs that I write, I start writing them as poems, and then I, transform them into songs.
Oh yes, when poems do become melodious, and I'm sure this is definitely not all. There should be a lot more, probably when you were a child and other things that you had done and that you continue to do. Would like to know about all of this.
When I was a child, when I was a kid, I used to draw very well. I used to know how to draw, but I kind of, let that go away. I don't know whether I still know how to draw. I've not tried it for a long time, but I used to be a good artist, and then that sort of died. But a few years back, I decided to experiment with painting, and it seems like I could do good in that domain, so I'm trying to give myself some time to study more about painting, and then maybe sometime in the future I can make that more of a hobby, more of a regular hobby, that I'll produce more paintings, maybe, hopefully. Those are the kinds of things that I do outside of writing. I like to have conversations about history. I am an ardent, fervent student of history, all kinds of history. So I like to, I am curious. I have a very curious mindset. So I like to learn a lot about other peoples, about the past, about, nations, about heroes, and those kinds of things. So yeah, those are the things that I do outside of writing.
The Oroko Nation is definitely blessed to have you. From composing songs in the Oroko language, a historian, a writer, a painter, you're definitely endowed. What sparked your interest in all of these creative activities?
I'll take you back to my childhood. I had parents who were relatively educated. My father was a teacher. My mom had been a teacher before she joined politics in the Congo City Council. My father, being a teacher, had a huge library of books. And at that very young age, I started reading these books. I think I started reading when I was like in class 2 or class 3, like that. And by the time I turned 10 years old, I'd read books from Chino Achebe to, Shakespeare to Wole Soyinka and stuff. Things like Things Fall Apart, People of the City. I'd read a lot of them. I'd read almost, a majority of Shakespeare's plays. I'd read things like Gulliver's Travels, King Arthur and the Round Table, books. I read them all.
You did read a lot of books. Did this reading in any way have an impact on the person you're becoming today?
And because of this reading, because of this curious mindset, this desire to learn more, to know more, to understand more things, I also started developing, some love for recreating the things that were going on in my mind. Because of reading, I had a lot of thoughts. I had a lot of thinking to do about the things I was reading. And so I started recreating those things, started writing them down, started singing them out, and I became very passionate about the arts, about creativity, about, reproducing the world around me in paper. And so I got into drawing, I got into, singing, I got into writing poems mostly, and then short stories. And then I had a very special relationship with old people. This is interesting, but I had a special relationship with old people in my village. I was a friend to the old. I listened to their stories. I listened to them telling histories of our past, of our ancestors, of where we come from and things like that. I didn't have a lot of friends as a child. So that gave me a lot of time to sort of sit down with older people, especially the very old ones, and listen to them and, imbibe a lot of knowledge, which I then started reproducing. I remember that in Form 1, I wrote the first thing that I said was the history of Bafaka. And Dr. Isbongo Zakios, who was the medical doctor at the time at Ekondo TT, he read some of that work, and I think he took that book. I don't know what happened to that short manuscript that I wrote about the history of Bafaka. But yeah, that is the journey, that is the inspiration, and here we are. Yeah.
From multiple readings to interacting with the elderly persons, this definitely didn't leave you indifferent, and we can see the impact. So I'd like to ask you, are there any specific routines that get you into the creative mindset?
routines. I don't think that I have specific routines that get me into, the creative space. I think of myself from a creative standpoint as a very, very spontaneous person. Because at any moment in time, any time of my life, something is going on in my mind. Something that maybe it's a song, or something that maybe it's a poem, or it's a story. Something is always happening in my mind. And if I feel very, very strongly about it, I write it down. So I don't have a specific routine that I would say this is my start and this is my middle and this is my end. When it comes to creativity, I don't have that. But I do try to organize my thoughts sometimes. I try to organize my thoughts sometimes into, okay, I feel very strongly about this thing. And I know that I may not have enough time to write an entire, book chapter on it. So I'm just going to try to make it into a song or, turn it into a poem, a short piece, that kind of stuff like that. So I don't have routines. I flow with the moment. I think that is the stuff of creativity, being able to live in the moment and to create in the moment. Yeah.
Just as he said, spontaneous, no routines, flowing with the moment. So what topics do you cover in your writings, and how do you decide on the content you want to share?
Well, I'll say that I cover a plethora of topics in my writings, in my poems, in my songs and things. But also I'll say the time of my life also, kind of dictates the kind of things that I write about. When I was very young, a lot of the things that I wrote about were, centered around God, my mom, my dad, that kind of stuff. And then I became a teenager. I started having, crushes on people. I started falling in love and not knowing how to express those, feelings to the people I was having them for. I would resort in writing poems, love poems. So love was romantic love was the main thing.
It definitely means your writing at that time carried a lot of emotions. And as time went on, did your writing perspectives change?
And then towards the end of my high school life to around this time, basically, I started looking at the world from a more political standpoint. And so politics began to be the central theme of my poems. Politics and morality and moral consciousness, that kind of stuff like that. The themes that I cover in my writings and in my songs and those kinds of things, they are all about humanity. We try to rethink our humanity vis-a-vis other people. And I say that I preach human politics, or politics that is based on humanism. And that's the kind of politics that calls for reflexivity, reflection on how we conduct, the distribution of state resources based on the human aspect of who we are, based on love, based on justice, based on, the recognition that others deserve just as much as we do. So these are the kinds of topics that I cover. I also do a lot of poetry that, celebrates culture, that celebrates where we come from. So histories and things like that. I have some epic poems that talk about the histories of the Oroko people, that kind of stuff, which I would I hope I'll publish one day so that Oroko can learn about themselves more from these things. Yeah, so these are the topics that I cover. There are a lot of them, but these are the major ones.
Great topics and great choices. Humanity, humanism, our community, our origin. The Oroko people are definitely proud to have you. And I can attest to the fact that you're quite knowledgeable about the Oroko people. What's the source of such great history?
Yeah, well, I'll say that I have moderate knowledge of the Oroko people. Like I said earlier, I made a lot of old friends from childhood. My grandfather, may he so rest in peace, he lived a very long life. He was born in the 19th century and he lived into the 20th, towards the end of the 20th century. And I had the, unique, I'll say, very, very unique opportunity, very unique luck, I'd say, to have met him. He died in 1996, so you can imagine how young I was. I was really young. But I do remember a lot of the things that he said. I remember that other old people would congregate at his house, where I lived my life at that time. He used to babysit me, basically. And these old people will come to the house and they'll sit around him and he'll be telling stories about, where we come from, where all the major families in the community come from, who were their founders, and that kind of stuff like that, how people are related to each other. So that was the beginning of my learning about the Oroko people. And then as I grew up, I began to be even more curious, doing a lot of research. Did research, both written and oral, and I became friends with some of the masters of Oroko history. Chief Esoito was my patron for a very long time. He was my father, may he so rest in peace. I had very deep conversations with him that also, contributed about the Oroko. I did conduct interviews with a lot of old people who lived some of this history. Some of them were taught this history in German schools or in British schools. There was a time, believe it or not, there was a time when people were learning Oroko history in Oroko communities, in schools. They were learning them in schools. The missionary schools, they were teaching Oroko's history in those schools. Some of the people who attended missionary school in the 1940s and in the 1950s kind of had some of these lessons taught them. And I was lucky to have met some of these people and to have had conversations with some of these people. That is the source of my knowledge. Elders. There is a saying that in Africa, when an elder dies, an entire library dies. It is true, because most of who we are was locked in the heads of these men and women who unfortunately did not have the, tools, the resources to be able to write the things that they knew down. But I did try to gather some, as much as I could. And I continue to do so. I continue to do so to this day. I continue to learn from elders. I continue to learn from what has been written. Like I said, I read a lot. I am very, very curious about history, about everything.
This was real history, and yes, when an elderly person goes, a whole big library is shut. And we do hope that all those who had the opportunity to encounter elderly persons, to listen to the history, to listen to the stories, are going to put all this together from their various ends and come up with something which can be accessed at any place and at any time by the upcoming generations. Now let's come back to writing. What is your genre of writing?
Generally, my genres are prose and poetry. I did, dabble a little bit in theater, and the piece that I wrote as as a play is the thing that I decided to change into, the novel that I'm working on right now, The Maiden King of Ambozi. But prose and poetry are the major things that I write. The novel, The Maiden King of Ambozi, for example, is inspired by the story of an Oroko woman who was, she's known in the lower Balwe area as Beriaba Ukpo. She was a warrior woman. So the story is kind of inspired by her story. So there's that aspect of my writing. So those are the genres that I work in.
Yes, I did read an excerpt of The Maiden King of Ambozi, and I'd say it's quite captivating and intriguing. Such a beautiful piece. Are there any writers that have shaped your writing style?
A number of writers. In terms of style, being Wole Soyinka, but in terms of what I write about, I think that I've been influenced by people like Ngoe Mathiongo and Chinua Achebe and Chimamanda Ngozi. These people inspire me a lot. And there are even younger African writers that I look up to. Let's say people of this time, people of our generation that I look up to, like, people like Patrice Nganang and stuff, whose writings inspire me.
Great choices, great minds, and of course, we are having a great outcome just right here with us. So, how do you balance the various aspects of your writing style?
Well, balancing the various aspects of my writing style, there are pieces that I've done which are really very simple and very accessible to anyone, anywhere, regardless of how sophisticated you are. I think having my audience in mind and thinking about how I want people to receive the things that I've written determines what happens at the end. So that is, I think, how I try to, organize my writing, being conscious of the audience, of the reader, and how they are going to receive the message that I'm trying to pass across.
Thank you very much for thinking about us, and we shall uncover everything that is hidden. Definitely, we are going to know all of that. Orokopedia is one of your babies, and if I get well, Orokopedia means learning Oroko. What does it constitute? What is it about? And how was it brought up? For how long have you been working on it?
I started working on Orokopedia early 2023. That is when I actually purchased, the domain and things like that to start basically working on the skeleton of Orokopedia, which I'm still doing right now. So at this point, it is not yet accessible to the public, but I am hoping that by 2024, by the end of 2024, we should have a Orokopedia out there and people should be able to access it and make comments. Yeah.
We are getting positive vibes about the Oroko Nation, Orokopedia. We are set for you. Come 2024, we are ready to have you. So it means you're trying to tell us that Orokopedia is still under construction or probably getting its finishing touches, if I got you right.
Yeah, Orokopedia is something that I'm still working on it. It's not yet born. It's still something that I'm working on. Any people who do not have a means of reconnecting with their past cannot fully understand the conditions of their present. and certainly cannot chart any kind of path for their future. The Oroko are one of those people who suffer, a dire absence of any sort of recorded, history of them anywhere. The only thing we can find about Oroko is, in colonial records of the Victoria, Kumba, and whatever divisions of the colonial era. That's all we can find about Oroko, and it's troubling. And the trend continues because we've not seen any Oroko people writing Oroko histories and things like that. Of course, there is Winya Okomotele, who has written a few things about the Balui, but that's it, that's about it. There's some works on the Bakundu, but that's about it. So, Orokopedia came as an idea to create a platform where we can not only curate knowledge on and about the Oroko people, but also create it and document what is happening now for future generations, like a continuous thing that we do every day. Also, because the Oroko language is dying, Orokopedia is sort of like an encyclopedia of the Oroko language itself. So we're trying to bring in all aspects of Oroko language within Orokopedia to be accessible to all people of Oroko descent and all people who care about learning more about the Oroko. So that is what Orokopedia is. It comes from a place of, dissatisfaction with the current state of information availability when it comes to the Oroko people, and from a desire to, arm the present and future generations of Oroko people with knowledge that they need to reconnect with the past, define the conditions of their present, and chart new and, sustainable paths for their future. That is the purpose, that is the mission of Orokopedia.
Bravo, bravo, bravo. Having a platform where we can access everything that concerns the Oroko people is definitely amazing. Their language, their history, their cultures. This is great. Thanks for coming up with this idea, and we do hope that all the persons, all the parties that are involved are going to give in their best to ensure that Orokopedia, the Oroko Encyclopedia, stands out as it's definitely supposed to be. Thanks very, very much for this great initiative. Orokopedia, we are ready for you. Now let's come back to writing. On what platforms do you engage with your readers?
Social media, apart from Facebook, I do have a Twitter account and things like that, but I really am not there that much. So most of my readership, I engage with them on Facebook and elsewhere, maybe WhatsApp and things. But the nature of my work at this time has not allowed me, or hasn't given me the chance to be able to do more with the audience. So yeah, that is where I am right now. But I hope that maybe by next year, I believe that I'll be less busy, from around mid next year, and I will devote my time to, developing some of these things that we've talked about and giving the audience or giving my readership more that they want to know or more that they want to get or consume from me.
Yes, sure. As the months go by, we hope you're going to have various platforms where we can get your writing materials. And has there been any interaction with the audience that was quite a memorable one for you?
Well, memorable interactions with the audience. I'll say that Each time I post something, I publish something, I get different reactions from people who read them, and a lot of times these reactions are all memorable. There are times when people confront me with, confusion. They tell me, oh, say for example, I wrote something about the Oroko nation, something historical or something like that. Someone will come to me and say, hey, Blessed, I really liked what you wrote, but some other person told me this other version, and I don't know which one is true, I don't know which one is right, and that kind of stuff. Sometimes I ask them to do more reading or to do more research. I sometimes give them resources to check the facts for themselves, or sometimes I simply tell them, well, truth is relative. Maybe don't ask for what is true, maybe ask for what is right, that kind of stuff. And there are others who have, simply just disagreed with me. The interesting part of all of this is whatever reaction I get from the audience, I take it very seriously. And seriously in the sense that if it is reaction that is asking me to think more intentionally about the thing that I've written, it serves as a learning point for me. Or if it's a reaction that is, all praise, 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 happy, 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 it serves as encouragement and stuff. So all of the engagements that I have with my audience, they are memorable and important, and I learn from all of them. They help me do better each time I go back on the drawing board, or each time I go back on my dashboard to write anything. I remember what someone said about the previous thing that I wrote, and I try to incorporate or try to remember them in this other piece that I'm writing. So yeah.
The audience too does have its place in the canvas, I guess. Reading through your writings, easily we get into the scenes in our minds. How do you come up with such captivating words?
Thank you for the compliment, but writing is an art, and art is a very intuitive phenomenon. Where I come from with what you call imaginative, language, evocative language, and things like that, is mostly my intuition. But intuition also is something that you train through experience, right? It's something you train through experience. And in this case, it is my experience with numerous writers from different countries, from different cultures. I read very intentionally. When I read a piece, I read very intentionally. I don't just read the content, but I also read the context. I also read the style. I imagine what the author was imagining in their mind of me reading that particular text. So when I do my own writing, I also have that same, strategy of thinking about how I want my audience to hear or to, feel what I am writing. And to do that, I should be able to make them see, to make them feel, to make them, experience the things that I'm writing about. It comes from a lot of reading others. It comes from a lot of practice. And it comes from a genuine, desire to make the audience connect with what you are saying. It comes from an assembly of the things that I've experienced, of the world that I've experienced, both in living through the world and also in reading the world through others. So that is it. That's where it comes from.
Intuition, style, context, content, all of this put in play to make sure that the audience fits exactly into what you want them to perceive in your own world. This is great. Wall to Bridges by Blessed E Ngoe. What's the story behind?
Well, was the bridges. You know, the story behind most of bridges is kind of interesting. I had just graduated from a US university and I really did not know what I wanted to do with my life at that time. I didn't know whether to go back to Cameroon, which was at the height of the Anglophone conflict or crisis in the northwest and southwest regions. I didn't know whether to remain in the United States because Trump was president and there was all this talk about, immigrants and things like that. There was a lot of fear, not only to me or not only in me, but, in many other people who found themselves in my situation at the time. So I took my life as the canvas on which to write the story. I was writing about the dilemmas that I was facing and the dilemmas that others like me were facing at the time. So Walls to Bridges comes from that place, a genuine concern about my homeland, Cameroon, and about whether I would be able to go back there, and a genuine concern about my future in this foreign land where I found myself. So I didn't know how to express my feelings to anyone but to write them down, to recreate them in the story. So the story was kind of like my escape point. This is where I would muse the feelings that were very deep in my heart. This is where I would muse the memories that I had of my homeland. This is where I would muse the futures that I imagined for myself and others that were caught in that same dilemma. So yeah, that is the place where Walls to Bridges comes from, and I hope that people don't read it as a story that ends there, but it's a story that prefigures futures that I wasn't able to see at that time when I wrote the story. Yeah.
Thanks very much for sharing with us Walls to Bridges by Blessed E Ngoe. That was Walls to Bridges before, and we'll definitely have Walls to Bridges for now, and subsequently Walls to Bridges for upcoming actions which you couldn't see at that time, as you had rightly said. So, do you have any upcoming events or projects now?
Well, like I said, I have The Maiden King of Ambozi, a novel that is now under review with publishers. I don't have a very clear timeline as to when the story will be out, but it is in the works, and I'm hoping that readers will love it. I also have a musical album that I'm trying to work on. So yeah, I'm working on that. But I don't know. I'm still trying to decide whether I want to create an album. It feels to me like albums are something of the past. These days, people do singles and things. I don't know. I'm still talking with my producer, as far as that is concerned. But these are things that people can look forward to. There's going to be a musical something, and there's going to be a novel out very soon. And then there's also going to be a collection of poems. This will be available on all the platforms that people get things these days from. In terms of music, Spotify and elsewhere. And in terms of books, Amazon and other places, other booksellers. And yeah, I mean, when these things come out, we'll know exactly where to find them.
So let's get set. We shall have a novel, we shall have songs, we shall have poems, all these coupled all together in this beautiful. I told you, this is an Oroko writer, painter, a visionary. Tata Blessed E Ngoes, the Oroko Nation is proud of you. We are really, really proud of you. And thanks for being here with us today. Thanks for sharing with us all these beautiful stories, all this insightful knowledge. It was really, really a beautiful exchange. Thank you very much.
But yeah, this has been a very, 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 very nice conversation with you, and I'm really glad that you gave me the opportunity to talk about me with you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And that was it for today's edition with Tata Blessed E Ngoes. Thank you for signing in and thank you for watching. Looking forward to another episode as we bring to you all the talents of the Oroko Nation. See you next time. Until then, if you have any questions or inquiries, feel free to reach out. Do have a wonderful, pleasant day and take care of yourselves. Oroko Oboso.